Hi, AP Psych. These are your Module 48 notes, this time still infancy and childhood, but on social development. So our central question is the same. How do we perceive and understand ourselves? Lots of learning targets. So I can discuss the interaction of nature and nurture, specifically social development and the determination of behavior. 2, I can describe the influence of temperament and other social factors on attachment and appropriate socialization. 3, I can explain how parenting styles influence development. And finally, I can identify key contributors in developmental psychology in the area of social development in childhood. So we'll be looking at all sorts of people today. So first, especially when talking about young infants, the key thing we're going to be looking at is something called attachment. So what does that mean? So attachment is an emotional tie that you have with another person. And it's particularly shown in young children by them seeking closeness to their caregiver. It could be a parent or someone else that is around the child, and showing distress upon separation. So if that caregiver is gone, the child lets you know that they're not happy that they're gone. Initially, psychologists thought that attachments formed because of young infants' dependence for nourishment, that the reason why they form such strong ties with these caregivers is human babies are pretty helpless, to put it in nice terms, when it comes to providing for themselves. They are totally dependent on a caregiver to provide them with their basic needs. So psychologists thought that must be why attachments happen. But they were wrong. In the 50s to 60s, there were psychologists, Harry and Margaret Harlow, who wanted to see if that was true. If what was more important to an infant? Was it nourishment, like food and water, or was it something else? So they took these little monkeys, FYI, pretty unethical experiment doing this with primates, just little research methods review. Okay. They took these monkeys that they separated from their mothers shortly after birth. Okay. And they put them in these cages where they gave them 2 surrogate mothers. Okay, what you're seeing in this photo. So you have on the left a surrogate mother that they called wire mother. And notice that literally she's made of wire, but the thing that you can see right here is a bottle. So this is what would provide nourishment, milk. Okay. And then on the right here, you have what became known as cloth mother, another surrogate. And they wanted to see, where did these baby monkeys spend the most time? Meaning, what brought them, made them the most calm, or soothed them the most. So I'm going to show you some video. So you'll see at the beginning, Harlow is talking to a reporter, and you'll see the monkeys, and he'll explain what he did.
Let me show you a monkey raised on a nursing wire mother. Now here are 106's 2 mothers. As you can see, it was weaned on a wire mother. Here's baby 106. Watch.
He's going to the wire mother.
He's got to eat to live.
Oh, he's going back.
He's back on the cloth mother, and he'll stay on the cloth mother. Actually, this baby spends from 17 to 18 hours a day on the cloth mother and less than 1 hour a day on the wire mother. We had predicted that the variable of contact comfort would be a variable of measurable importance, but we were unprepared to find that it completely overwhelmed and overshadowed all other variables, including those of nursing.
Frankly, Doctor, if it comes to a choice between wire and cloth, it's reasonable to expect that any child will go to the cloth. It's a matter of creature comfort, like a baby with its blanket. But is this really love?
Well, what do you mean by saying that a baby loves its mother? Certainly one thing we mean is that it gets a great feeling of security in the presence of the mother. Now, Mr. Collingwood, wouldn't you say that if you frightened a baby, that it went running to its mother, was comforted, and then all the fear disappeared and was replaced by a complete sense of security that that baby loved its mother? Now, in this experiment, this is the apparatus we use.
That looks diabolical.
That's just the way the baby monkey feels about it. Flashing eyes, loud sound, moving mechanical parts, all of these things are designed to frighten a monkey. Now here we have a peaceful, resting baby monkey. Let's find out what his reactions to his mother are when we frighten him.
He's scared, all right.
And he does what any child will do in a similar situation.
He runs away.
It's more than running away. He was running to his mother, to touch her, to drive away his fear. Contact with the mother changes his entire personality. Look, now he's actually threatening the diabolical object. All right. This gives us part of the picture of the strength of infantile love.
Okay. So sorry about my dog waking you up if you heard her. So hopefully what you saw, what brought the baby monkey the most comfort, okay, that made them feel okay. I think that last scene with that robot thing, whatever that was, where once the monkey was on the cloth mother, the monkey felt emboldened to like threaten that robot. And what does that really tell us about the power of attachment between an infant and a child? So I want you to write a short summary that describes these results. So go ahead and write. Okay, so once you're done writing, if you need to go back and rewatch, hopefully you said something to the effect that Harlow was studying attachment, that he wanted to see what was more important to these infant monkeys. Was it food or nourishment, or was it attachment and comfort, or as they said in the video, with love? And based on the amount of time that the monkeys spent with either the cloth mother or the wire mother, we know that having this attachment was immensely important to the baby monkeys. And we can see this going through to today. When you have a baby, one of the first things that they encourage is creating an attachment with that newborn. So they'll do things like skin-to-skin contact as soon as possible after birth. And what they're trying to encourage is that immediate attachment. We'll talk later on what happens if a baby does not form those attachments. Can have some pretty severe psychological and even cognitive issues as the child grows. So another related idea to attachment is this idea of familiarity. So familiarity-based attachments often form during a critical period. So remember, critical period is something that we've talked about previously when looking at language development. It's that window of time to where you need to be exposed to a particular stimulus or a particular experience in order to develop normally. So when we talked about this previously with language, If a child isn't introduced to language within that critical period, within really those first 3 to 4 years of life, that child will have difficulties with language throughout their life. Okay. What this is really talking about, this critical period, with some birds like the geese that we see here with ducks, um, they form an attachment when they see their mom for the first time. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Okay. The first moving object that they see is usually their mother. From then on, after they hatch, they will only follow her, their own mom. Fun story, you can make young ducklings or geese um, form that attachment to you. This is going to be something called imprinting. Okay. So, imprinting is this process by which certain animals form really strong attachments during an early life critical period. This was examined by Konrad Lorenz. He did experiments with various types of birds. Notice this imprinting. Anyone familiar with the Twilight series? This is not creepy imprinting with Bella and Jacob. This is a natural thing that happens with various types of birds. So while human children, don't imprint in the same way, they do form strong preferences for those people that are familiar to them. So if you've been around a younger sibling or a cousin, you know generally that the child favors that caregiver that they've spent more time around that's more familiar to them. I'm going to show you a short video of some little goslings here. This is not Lorenz himself, but another biologist that's using these ideas in order to study migration patterns of a particular type of goose. So here you go.
Meet Jessica Meir.
I'm Jessica Meir, and I'm a scientist at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada.
Meir is a biologist and a postdoctoral researcher at the university. But to a brood of 12 goslings, she's also something else. Mom.
And they really think that I'm their mother.
The 7-month-old bar-headed goslings, so called for the stripes that adults have on their head, are imprinted on Meir. Imprinting was a process that started as soon as they hatched.
I went to the Sylvan Heights Waterfowl Park in North Carolina just in time a few days before the birds were going to hatch. And so I was the first thing that they saw. I actually held them in my hand as soon as they came out of the egg.
All summer long, it was intensive bonding time between Meir and her chicks.
And so we would spend long hours and days in North Carolina in the summer just sitting outside, and they were crawling all over me and napping on top of me, and then we would go for walks and come back. And especially in the beginning, I would say, I'm not sure who's imprinted more, them on me or me on them.
The imprinting is just a tool to familiarize the geese with being held and observed and to make them more easily trainable. The real question behind Meir's research is something else. How did these geese accomplish super bird feats of flight? See, bar-headed geese are...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there just because if you want to find out about these geese, you can look it up on YouTube and watch the rest. But I really want to have you see that first piece where with these goslings, as long as she was the first one, when they hatch, then they form that strong attachment to her. Okay, so attachment, again, happens not only in monkeys or in ducks or goslings, but also people. So these attachment differences were studied by a psychologist named Mary Ainsworth. And Ainsworth is most famous for something called the strange situation experiment. And she wanted to see how children interacted with their mothers. So, a little side note about Ainsworth, this was a very small sample. It was all people that were white, suburban. So, in terms of being able to generalize to a larger population, know that that is limited to people that are similar to those that were in the study. So, here's kind of the background of what she did, and then I'll walk you through what's said on the slide. So think of it kind of like a mom dropping a child off at a daycare, like a child care situation. And Ainsworth would look to see, and it was always mom. So mom dropping off the child. One, how did the child react being in a new place? Did the child stay really close to mom? Did the child feel free to go explore the environment? Did the child hide behind mom? Okay. Then she had mom leave. Okay. She had mom leave. And then watch to see what did the child do when mom wasn't around. And then look to see how did the child react when mom came back. Okay. And based on what a child did, she divided their reactions up and attached them to these various types of attachment. Okay. What she thought was the best was called secure attachment. So when mom was dropping off, the child would play, would feel free and secure enough to go explore the environment. Okay. When mom left, the child was upset that mom left. But when mom came back, the child would run up to mom, like so happy to see her. Child would be calm. Okay. Another type is avoidant or insecure attachment. And this leads to, according to Ainsworth, anxiety or avoidance of trusting relationships. So when going to drop off the child with avoidant or insecure attachments would be less likely to explore. They'd be like holding on to mom's leg. Then when mom left, the child wouldn't just be a little bit upset, but like extremely distressed, like screaming bloody murder. Okay. Then when mom returned, the child would either continue to be upset, meaning not really soothed that mom is back, or completely indifferent, like, oh, you're back, whatever, don't really care, because there's not a strong attachment or secure attachment there. So you can see here the various types of attachment. It is highly unlikely that you will have to go super specific in terms of what you need to know. What I would focus on is this idea of secure attachment and what that looks like. And then knowing that there's other types of attachment, either avoidant insecure or resistant insecure, where the child didn't want to explore, where they were either unconcerned with the absence or were really distressed when mom left. You can see with stranger anxiety, with avoidant, they were perfectly fine with a stranger because they had no attachment with a caregiver, with mom. So stranger was just as good. And then when mom returned, they either rejected her, like kept crying, or were totally uninterested, really didn't care. Okay. So why do we care about this? Why is attachment such a big deal? Really what we're trying to answer is this question. Is attachment style nurture, meaning based on someone's parenting, or is it more nature influenced? And then how does that affect someone's temperament? So temperament is how emotionally reactive someone is. Okay. Think of it almost kind of like type A or type B. Are you very overly emotional reactive, or are you more chill? Okay. We see that in babies too. So there's evidence to support nature in terms of temperament, meaning some children are just born more reactive than others. Okay. We can tell temperament differences very early on. If you've ever been around parents of a newborn, they might say something like, oh, our baby is just so calm. They just so smiley and happy. They hardly cry. Or you have parents who say, our kid cries all the time. Like, I can't seem to make them happy. And that's from a very young age, before a parent has really had time to like mess up the kid. Okay. We also see physiological differences in infants that are seen as more anxious and inhibited. We can look at things like their sympathetic nervous system response, what's going on in their amygdala, and we will see those children that are more emotionally reactive. We can actually see differences in their brain compared with babies that are less emotionally reactive. So that all supports this idea of nature, that it's just innate. Okay. But there's also some evidence to support nurture, that parenting style and How a parent interacts with their child affects their temperament. Okay. If parents were taught to respond appropriately to emotionally reactive infants that would cry all the time, okay, 68% of those were rated as being securely attached, meaning they were able to basically teach these babies to be more calm. Compared to infants that were in a control, only 28% of those children or infants were seen as being securely attached. Remember, secure attachment was the goal, leads to, according to researchers, healthier, happier children and adults. Okay. So, when answering this question, what affects temperament more? As always, it's both. It's likely both nature and nurture. But knowing that that nurture piece is a piece tells us that as parents, if you plan to be a parent someday, making sure that you're spending adequate time and paying adequate attention to your child to help promote secure attachment. Additionally, why attachment matters as people grow is it can affect their later relationships. Eric Erickson, he's someone we're going to talk about in our next unit with personality, looked at securely attached children and saw that they were more likely to develop basic trust. So this affected their future romantic relationships, their future friendships, because they felt they had a sense that the world was both predictable and trustworthy. And he thought that if a child was lacking secure attachment, then they would have trust issues as they got older. And then finally, when we look at the difference in people's attachment and how it relates to motivation, okay, securely attached children are less fearful of failure and have a greater drive to achieve compared with insecurely attached people. And both have their pros. Someone who's insecurely attached is more likely to be less trustworthy of people, so they are more likely to actually get a bad vibe from someone. They might alert their friends, like, I don't know, that person's kind of sketch. They're a little sus. Like, I don't know that we can trust them. Okay. Where a securely attached person is like, thinks that, they see sunshine and roses with everybody. They see the best of intentions. So my question is, based on the work of Ainsworth and Erickson, how does a person's level of attachment affect them later on in life? So go ahead and respond. So there's a lot that you could have said here based on the strain situation experiment and someone's level of attachment, and then how does that affect them later? We know that people are more emotionally reactive if they are less attached. We know that they are less trusting of people if they are less attached. And securely attached people are more likely to alert to things like danger. Not too much more, but a little bit more. Okay. Self-concept versus self-esteem. So while infancy, we focused on attachment, during childhood, as a child grows, we focus on this positive sense of self. So what is the difference between someone's self-concept and their self-esteem? So self-concept is defined as all of our thoughts and feelings about ourselves. If I were to ask you the question, who are you? Okay. We really develop this sense of self or recognize that we are an individual at about a year and a half old. And a fun way to find out if someone has self-concept yet or not for a toddler is using what's called the rouge test. So the rouge test would be, if you don't know what rouge is, it's kind of like blush, like makeup, tinted makeup. And if you put a toddler in front of a mirror, or really before you put them in front of the mirror, put a little bit of blush or rouge on their nose, and then put them in front of the mirror. If the child has a sense of self yet, this idea of self-concept, when looking at the mirror, they will recognize it's themselves. And the way we know that is they will move their hand to their own nose to try to rub that makeup off. Okay. We further develop that sense of self during school age. Think like elementary school going into middle school, where they start discussing things like gender. They recognize differences between genders. They look at other people and their own psychological traits. Okay. We know that children who have more positive self concepts have a stronger sense of who they are more confident, they're more independent, they're more optimistic. They're also more likely to be securely attached. Okay. And then if we compare that to self esteem, it's about how do you feel about who you are. So, self concept, who am I? Self esteem, how do I feel about who I am? Do I have positive feelings about myself? Do I have negative feelings about myself? Almost, y'all. Okay, so we have some parenting styles that also can affect how we end up and how we grow. So, according to Diana Baumrein, we have four major parenting styles. I'm going to be showing you when we come into class some different clips from TV shows and movies where I'll illustrate each of these styles. But after I'm done talking here, I'm going to ask you to evaluate your own parents' parenting style. So the first type, and FYI, these do show up on AP exam fairly often, these parenting styles. The first type is authoritarian parents. So these are the type of parents that are like my way or the highway. If you ask them to do something, they might say no immediately. If you ask why, they say, because I said so. Okay. These are not the parents you interrupt. These are not the parents that you have conversations and sit down and we talk through the situation. It's like, I'm the parent, you're the child, you listen to what I say. Okay, that's authoritarian. I remember this, I think of history terms, so like totalitarian, that Aryan ending helps me to remember. Okay. Next, I'm just going to go down, is negligent parents. These are parents that are pretty much uninvolved. Like, they don't demand, they're not responsive, they may or may not provide basic needs. They're pretty inattentive, they're pretty careless, they don't try to build a relationship with their child. They literally pretty much neglect them. Close to that, but not as far to that, are permissive parents. So, permissive parents provide for their child. They make some efforts to build a relationship with them, but they pretty much let the kid do whatever they want. You want to go out all night? Go for it. You want this? You want me to buy you that? Sure. You want to go this long trip by yourself? Sure, no problem. Whatever you want. No curfew. Okay. When I was in high school, that's the friends who had permissive parents. That's where I asked to stay the night at their house. So then I could go do whatever I wanted too. Okay. That was not my mom. So permissive parents. And then finally, you have authoritative parents. Be careful here because authoritative is very close to authoritarian and they are very different. You want to figure out a way for yourself to be able to distinguish these two. So authoritative parents are both demanding yet responsive. So they might make rules, but they're going to explain to you why they're making the rules. Okay? So if you were to ask an authoritative parent if you could go to a party, okay, they might say no, but they're going to explain to you why they're saying no. They might sit you down and say, you know, I know you really want to go to this party. Here's why I think it's not a good idea. So I'm going to say no to this. Okay. So they set and enforce rules, but explain why. They know that there's exceptions. If you break a rule, they're going to sit down and talk with you and not yell at you or say, what the heck? So you can pause here if you like it in graphic style. You can see here, okay? One thing that's important to know about parenting styles is depending on the parenting style, we see different outcomes. The most positive outcomes where we see the child that has a higher self-esteem, they're self-reliant, they can self-regulate, meaning they're in control of their own emotions, they're more socially competent, they had authoritative parents. So authoritative parents have the most positive outcomes in comparison to the other types of parents. So my question for you is, which parenting style or styles, because each parent could have different styles, do your parents use with you? Explain, give me some examples of why you think that. Last slide, and then I have some multiple choice questions for you. So the last thing that we need to recognize is that culture plays a role in child raising, and what's valued in that culture affects how a child grows up. So in westernized cultures like the United States, looking at the US today, we prefer kids who are more independent, who think they're mine. You've heard probably all throughout your education, we want you to be critical thinkers. We want you to be true to yourself. But if we look back 50 years ago in the US, it was more about obedience and you better show respect to your elders. Someone tells you to do something, you better do it because they said so. Okay, so it can shift over time. Whereas if we look at, some of you may have personal experience with this in Asian or African cultures, emotional closeness is valued. Often infants and toddlers sleep with their parents for a fairly long time. It's expected and it's just a way of life to stay close to your family members. And there's a strong sense of family self that you're going to do things in terms of your career, in terms of your future, to bring honor to your family. You want to make your parents and your family proud. Okay. Whereas in more Americanized culture, for myself, it's like it's for you. It's all about you rather than how can I help my family as a whole. One thing to make note, you don't necessarily have to write this down, but just something to think about. There's no one right way to raise a child. One culture's child raising methods are not better than another. They're just simply different. And to put it out there with your own parents, I know you all have various degrees of what type of parents they were, whether you appreciate their parenting style or not. And this isn't to excuse anything that they may have done right or wrong. But know that as parents, when you have a child, there's no booklet that they give us telling us, here's how to raise your kid well. We're often just trying to figure it out as we go and trying to do the best that we can. Okay. So again, not to excuse anything that they've done or haven't done, but just keep that in the back of your mind. We're all just trying to do our best. Okay, some multiple choice questions for you, then you're done. So first, number one, an 18-month-old typically recognizes herself in a mirror. This self-awareness contributes to what? Go ahead and select. The correct answer is B, self-concept. Number two, in the attachment studies conducted with infant monkeys, what did Harlow find? Go ahead and choose. The correct answer is B, contact comfort was the most important factor in attachment. Number three, what do we call an optimal window of opportunity for proper development? Go ahead and choose. The correct answer is B, critical period. Number four, which of the following identifies the parenting style most likely to ground a teen who missed a curfew and tried to explain the rationale for doing so after considering the teen's reasons? Go ahead and select. The correct answer is A, authoritative. Be careful there, remember. And last one, which of the following would be considered a sign of secure attachment in a 1-year-old? Go ahead and choose. The correct answer is D, becoming distressed when the parent leaves and seeking contact on return. So that is the end of infant and child social development.